It's a pleasure we make it known to you all that in the dead of night on April 16th, 2025, shadows crept toward the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. Armed men advanced with one goal: to end Captain Ibrahim Traoré's rule before sunrise. But what they didn't realize was that this wasn't just a coup attempt. It was the match that would ignite one of the most radical military revolutions Africa has ever seen. Foreign powers watched closely, confident they'd see another African government crumble. But when the sun rose, the headlines didn't announce a fallen leader. Instead, they signaled the birth of a new era, one where a gold-rich, ammo-starved country would challenge the global order. A nation of gold, begging for bullets. Imagine your village is under siege. The enemy has firepower, strategy, and bloodlust. Your soldiers have the will, but empty rifles. Desperate, they call neighboring towns, hoping for borrowed guns. By the time help arrives, it's too late. The village is ash. That isn't fiction. That's Burkina Faso's grim reality before Traoré came to power. Despite being drenched in gold reserves, Burkina Faso was militarily strangled by foreign allies. France, once its colonial overseer and supposed partner, blocked weapon sales not just from within its own borders, but from other nations too. Their justification? Burkina Faso could buy uniforms, boots, maybe a cap, but not bullets or guns. And the terrorists? They had no such restrictions. This wasn't just Burkina Faso's nightmare. Across the Sahel, Mozambique, Nigeria, Mali, the story was the same. African nations were forced into a devastating choice: surrender sovereignty in exchange for protection, or stand proud and fall alone. The coup that changed everything, Security Minister Mahamudu Sana later revealed the coup's full scope. Rogue military officers, backed by terrorists, had coordinated attacks nationwide. The plan was clear: destabilize, overthrow, and reinstall a puppet government. But the plot unraveled when intelligence intercepted chilling communications, messages, linking the conspirators not just to insurgent leaders, but to Côte d'Ivoire, and even to Traoré's ousted predecessor, Damiba, behind the scenes. The quiet footprints of Western interests, desperate to reassert dominance. In most African nations, this would have been the end. Coup succeeds or fails. Either way, foreign control tightens its grip. But Traoré did something rare. He turned the ashes of that attempted coup into fuel for transformation. A nation that forges its own steel will never beg for bullets. Just 3 days after surviving the attack, Captain Traoré stood before thousands in Bobo-Dioulasso. What he said is now etched across West Africa's military academies. A nation that forges its own steel will never kneel for bullets. He didn't just arrest the conspirators. He lit the fire under a military revolution that would ripple across the continent. In 2024, Burkina Faso laid the foundation for its first armed forces industrial complex. It began modestly, uniform production, but after the failed coup, it skyrocketed. Traoré redirected 30% of the country's gold revenue into developing a fully self-sufficient military production hub. Where other African leaders offered speeches, Traoré offered factories, redefining power in Africa. Burkina Faso's transformation was not about stockpiling guns. It was about shattering a centuries-old dependency, one where Africa bled resources and begged for arms. Now, the country is producing its own drones, its own ammunition, and demanding foreign companies buy 30% of their equipment locally or lose mining licenses. The results? 6,000 new defense sector jobs. Youth manufacturing employment tripled. Terrorist response times dropped from 72 hours to 18. The gold that once fueled foreign militaries now fuels Africa's defense. The threat of sovereignty. Of course, this didn't sit well with the West. French officials warned of dangerous precedents. US generals labeled Burkina Faso a regional threat. The real concern? that African nations might dare to break the chains and follow suit. As Traoré bluntly put it, they do not fear our weapons, they fear that we build at all. This isn't about Burkina Faso alone, it's about Congo, Nigeria, Mali, every African country where rebels roam freely, while governments wait for permission to defend themselves. In the Sahel, ECOWAS, once hailed as a brotherhood of nations, stood idly by during years of terror. But the moment countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso asserted control, ECOWAS, backed by Western powers, threatened war. The message was clear: African independence, if it's not managed by outsiders, is unacceptable. Forging a new future for generations, young African engineers either fled or stayed jobless. Today, they design UAVs that respond within hours to attacks. Village elders, once abandoned, now speak with awe of troops arriving fully armed. No more begging France for permission. To protect their own, Burkina Faso isn't just building weapons. It's building dignity, security, and a new model of sovereignty. The question is no longer whether Traoré will succeed. The question is, who will follow him? Africa spends over $20 billion annually importing foreign weapons. That same amount could fund 40 Burkina Faso-style defense hubs. Traoré's strategy, born from the ashes of betrayal, is now a rallying cry. When you build your own weapons, you choose your own battles. This isn't just Burkina Faso's story. This is Africa's moment. The beginning of true independence, not just from colonial flags, but from colonial economics, military dependence, and imposed helplessness. And that's what makes them afraid. This is Anne Lewis for The Strategic Lens, seeing beyond the headlines and into the heart of how real power moves.